And Karla is the founder and the executive director of the International Owl Center. She acquired Alice the Great Horned Owl to use in educational programs in 1998 and began studying great horned owl vocalizations in 2004. Karla is now the world authority on their vocalizations, and has given presentations in the Netherlands, Germany, Argentina, Italy, Portugal, and South Africa. In the last 2 years, she's been using acoustic monitoring to detect wild barn owls in the state of Minnesota. Karla.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right? I'll try and stay put. I tend to wander and gesticulate wildly when I'm talking about owls, because owls are cool, right? And especially things like barn owls. Okay, so I've been asked to talk a little bit about the Owl Center as an introduction. How many of you have been to the Owl Center in Houston before? Yay, some of you have been there. So we're a fairly new facility. We've been open about 6.5 years. And our goal is, we're the only all-owl education center in the United States. Very specialized, but the fun thing about being really specialized is you can do really deep dives into owls, because owls are generally thrown into one big bucket, and here's all the things about owls, when actually they're actually a really diverse group of birds. Whoops. So our mission is to make the world a better place for owls through education and research. So education is our primary, research is kind of secondary for us. We do that through on-site programs, off-site programs, online programs. Thankfully, we were doing those before COVID hit, so that was easy for us to switch over to. And then our real goal is to empower people to live owl-friendly lives, because yay, we can talk about owls all day, but each one of us has an impact on owls in our lives. And if you know how you impact owls, then we can make a difference for owls together. We can all make the world a better place for owls. So that's kind of our end goal. That's our take-home message with our programming. And we do original research, engaging citizen scientists when possible. So we have had some citizen scientists involved in this. Obviously, we do educational displays. Right now, we have mounted specimens of 9 of the 19 species of owls that occur in North America. We're working on getting all 19 species. I think I have 7 more species in the freezer right now, with a spotted owl on the way, so that's exciting. One of our COVID projects was these accurate life-size spread-wing owl silhouettes. Those were an amazingly difficult task, because we literally started from the dry research of measurements, and anyway, it was a great thing to do during COVID. We've got a skull collection of different owl skulls. Really awesome to see how the owls in different genera have very similar skulls, but they're very different than owls in other genera. We have some owl eggs. We do live owl programs. We do some really specialized programs. So we have this program we call Owlology 401. So it's basically comparative owl anatomy, where you're not dissecting owl pellets, you're dissecting owls. And we have usually six different genera of owls on the table at once, and so we're comparing and contrasting the ear structure, the feet, the feathers, all that kind of stuff. Really, really fun. Learning experience for staff also. And then, of course, we have a gift shop that has everything owl you can imagine in it, which is dangerous for those of us who work there, because we own half the things that are there. We do our International Festival of Owls. Maybe even more people have been to the Owl Festival, because we've been doing that since 2003, and that's actually how the Owl Center got its start. The International Festival of Owls started out through the Houston Nature Center, literally as a hatch day party for Alice the Great Horned Owl. Late February, the first one was, there's nothing going on that time of year, and we did some live owl programs, and first year we had 300 people show up. Well, when you're in a town of less than 1,000, that's kind of a lot. So we started expanding, and within a few years, we had people flying in from around the country, and we're like, seriously, you flew here from California to our Owl Festival in Little Houston, Minnesota? Wow. And that's when we realized there was nobody else doing anything like that. So we took it and ran and expanded from the live owl programs. We present the World Owl Hall of Fame Awards, so we solicit nominations. We have experts from around the world do the judging, but we get to present the awards. So we have all the top owl people from around the world. That particular year, we had people here from Montana, Alaska, Minnesota, Jamaica, and England. So we do have people coming in from all over the world, which is a fantastic learning opportunity for us also. And one thing that's kind of taken off and skyrocketed is our Children's International Owl Art Contest. It started out as a local coloring contest, and now is this highly competitive International Owl Art Contest for kids, so it's all 18 and under. This year we had 2,740 entries from 49 different countries. It's absolutely stunning. So if you come to the Owl Center, we're in this big old historic brick building that has ceilings that are like way tall. So we just plaster a wall with kids' owl art. It's really amazing. One thing that COVID was good for us was connecting with a lot of new people. So when we were closed, one of the two, we were closed for 3 months. Earlier in the year, we were closed in 2 months. Later in the year, last year, we started our virtual owl expert speaker series because we know all these cool owl people from all over the world that know tons of stuff, and owl people like to talk about owls, right? I'm guilty of that one. And everybody on the whole planet was stuck at home. So we thought, well, hey, let's do this webinar series. Let's make it free so it's accessible to absolutely everybody, regardless of income. And we had to get a webinar license and concurrently live stream it to YouTube, and it was astounding. So we did presentations every Sunday afternoon at 1, and we averaged 350 devices logged in to each presentation. That was the average. The high was over 600. And that's devices, so there's more than one person watching the devices, 10 to 20 countries every week. And grand total, we had 49 different countries registered to attend those programs. And it was great, like the first one, this was Ruar Solheim from Norway. He was talking about snowy owls. Somebody asked a question about snowy owls, how far they migrate, they're circumpolar. And he said, well, it'd be really great to know if they go to Mongolia. And someone types in, I'm in Mongolia. And yes, we do get them occasionally. It's like, dang, this is fantastic. So if you're interested in catching up with these, we will be doing some more in January and February, not as extensive as last winter. But if you go to our YouTube channel and look up our Virtual Owl Expert Speaker Series, many of these are archived and you can still watch them for free. So they're 1-hour presentations and 1 hour of questions, and we virtually never got through all the questions in 1 hour. The Q&A is just as good as the presentations. So that was fantastic. We're planning a World Owl Conference. This will be the first one to be held in the United States, and COVID's made that fun. So it was supposed to be in October of 2021, then it was going to be October of 2022, and now it's going to be in October of 2023. But we'll get there. We will have it sooner or later. But we're committed to making it an in-person conference because it's so rare for owl people to be able to get together to share information. And we're working on a future facility. So right now we operate out of a brick storefront, which is not ideal and not where people expect us to be. All of our live owls live off-site in the country and commute to work every day. So we have an owlmobile, and that's how they get to work. But our future facility will be several acres. We'll have outside aviaries, and the really awesome part is we're planning to have these walk-through aviaries where you walk through the side of the aviary and there's literally nothing between you and the owls. And at first when I heard about this concept, I'm like, you can't do that with raptors. But Wolfgang Schertzinger's been doing it in the Bavarian National Forest in Germany for decades successfully, so he's working with us on there's a whole lot of very fine design protocols that need to go in that. So that's what we're working towards. So we've been doing this great horned owl vocal research, started with Alice the great horned owl because she's a human imprint. She thinks I'm her mate. She expected me to respond as a male, and I didn't know what I was doing, and she was getting mad, so kind of in self-defense, I went to the scientific literature and found out nobody had ever studied great horned owl vocalizations in depth, so I started that in 2004. In 2010, we got this captive breeding pair, Rusty and Iris, the great horned owls. Those are live on our YouTube channel still, even though they're retired and not breeding anymore. And we have highly sensitive microphones and security cameras in there, so we can observe them without them knowing they're being observed. But those microphones pick up what's going on outside the aviaries within about half a mile. In 2014, they picked up a wild barn owl. I'm like, ooh, well, actually, I heard it. I was going to bed. I always, when you do owl vocal research, you sleep with the window open, right? That's how you do it, because I'm not a night owl, so I just fall asleep and then I program to wake up whenever I hear anything. So I heard one barn owl scream as I was going to bed. I'm like, that had to have been. And I just went to sleep because I knew it was all recorded on the recording system, and I could just pull it up the next morning. Sure enough, there were 3 barn owl screams. I thought, well, wow, that's cool. So we didn't hear anything else for several years. We did not have a captive barn owl at that time. We got a captive barn owl in 2016 as an education ambassador. And she actually kind of helped with this research because she would interact with the wild ones. So we would notice her calling a lot. I mean, she calls as they normally do, spring and fall quite a bit, summer not so much. But when these wild ones would come by, we knew, I never saw them. They're flying through my yard over the house. I've never seen them because they're active when it's so darn dark out. But on the security cameras, you can see Piper, our barn owl, is reacting to the wild ones, and the wild ones are reacting to her. So let's see how the audio is. Hopefully it's not so loud it's going to blow your ears out, because barn owl screams are, you know, that. Is this not going to go now? Oh, it did not go. I wonder if this, well, let me do it this way. Oh, the joys of switching from PC to a Mac, huh? It's supposed to be part of the click sequence, and it's not playing here either. Any thoughts? Well, you can just imagine. She's sitting here on the perch. She opens her mouth, lets out a blood-curdling screech, and then she sits there. And then there's this other very loud screech because the other one's going right through the yard, and her head snaps over to look at it. So you know, I'm not imagining things. These are actually barn owls. She's reacting with them. Yeah. So that's not specifically this one, and hopefully the other ones will play when we get there. So I will have some other calls. But basically, she was helpful in doing this. So we did get wild ones in 2017, 2018, 2019. And after a few years, I realized, okay, the wild barn owls probably are not saying, hey, that's International Owl Center property, let's go there. They're probably in other places. But our recording equipment is fixed and not portable. So I applied for a Savaloya grant and was very happy to get it conveniently when COVID hit. So we were shut down. Perfect timing so I could learn the technology. So the grant that I got in 2022 was for 2 song meter minis. So they're portable automated recording units about the size of 2 decks of cards. And think of a trail cam, except it records audio instead of video and pictures. And then you program it, what frequencies and what time of night and all that kind of stuff. You program them. Battery powered, switch out the SD cards. Because I only had 2 and I wanted to cover a lot of area, I moved those recorders every 2 weeks and then pulled the SD cards and processed. So you pull the SD card out, you have an immense amount of data, and then I would run it through the Kaleidoscope Pro software, which you can create classifiers and recognizers so that theoretically your target species, it pulls out those. Barn owls have a broad spectrum vocalization, which you'll see after a while, which it did not work well to pull out. So I literally just had to program, okay, do this frequency range, calls that are of this duration to this duration with short gaps in between, blah, 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 blah. And each time I would go through those, I would have, if I was really lucky, like only 500 sound detections to go through. But sometimes it was 20,000 that you have to go through. And that kind of gets to be a lot. But what was cool, I put the recorders in a lot of different places. So Houston, Fillmore, Winona, and Olmsted counties, and detected barn owls in 2 different locations, 2 new locations. So that was exciting. I thought, hey, let's do this some more. But this is kind of what I'm looking at. So these are spectrograms of 4 different species. One of those is a barn owl, 3 are not. Anytime you see anything that looks, because when you're going through the spectrograms, you're going through visually. So when you see one that looks like a barn owl, then you stop and you have to play it. So what we're looking at here, the first one is a raccoon, second one is a gray tree frog, third one is a barn owl, last one is a juvenile great horned owl begging call, which, man, if you've got those around, they call a lot. Now let's see if these will actually play. So this should play the raccoon. Okay, so it comes off, can be quite similar sounding to a barn owl. Gray tree frog. Can you guys hear that enough, or do we need to, that's okay? All right, so it sounds very different. The quality is very different, even though it looks very similar, okay? And then here's the barn owl. It's a very abrupt start to the call, and then last, the juvenile great horned owl begging call, okay? So that's what I'm listening to as I'm going through those, and you got to go through a lot of them. What we did then was say, hey, we've got some great habitat, we've got places where we detected barn owls, let's put up some nests and see if we can get some barn owls in the nest. So we put up nests at 5 different locations, and we monitored 3 of those with trail cams in 2021. In 2021, I got another Savaloya grant, yay, for 2 more song meter minis, and I also got one from the DNR, and then the company later on sent me a micro to test out. So I had 6 recorders to play with that arrived at various different times in 2021. Those, because I realized these barn owls, they don't call like other owls. We think of owls as being talkative, a lot of species. Barn owls are not. They do not say much at all. So I put them in fixed locations. So I had 6 different fixed locations this year, and I detected wild barn owls at 5 of the 6 locations, which kind of blew me away. So the 2 locations we had barn owls last year, we still had barn owls this year. So are they sticking around? Are they breeding? Are they just passing through similar areas? I'm not sure. But we did not detect any barn owls with the trail cams, and they didn't nest in any of our nest boxes. So then there was this nest over in La Crosse, which I assume many of you probably heard about. Yeah, this was big news. So for Wisconsin, this was the first documented barn owl nest in 22 years. And how I heard about it was one of our board members saw a Facebook post about this young barn owl that had gone into rehab over in La Crosse. And I got it at breakfast, and I just jumped up. I'm like, oh my gosh, that thing is too young to fly. It had to have nested there. And then it's okay, do we share the post? Do we not share the post? You know, it's a barn owl, right? But it's like, it's the city of La Crosse. Nobody's going to be able to pinpoint where that was in the city of La Crosse. La Crosse is kind of big. So I shared it, and almost immediately somebody posted, yeah, that's the owl that I picked up in my yard. I hid the comment, sent her a message, and said, call me immediately, which she did. And I said, don't tell anyone it was in your yard. You're going to be inundated. She said, oh, come on over, and you can see it. I think I know where the nest is. And I drove over there immediately and walked in the yard and went, that's the nest tree. No ifs, ands, or buts. They have this big, half-dead silver maple tree in their yard with huge cavities in it. I'm like, it's that. And she said, well, what about? Nope, it's in that tree. So we got out an endoscope. My husband was with me. Poke in the first hole, nothing. Poke in the second hole, nothing. Poke in the third hole, whoop, there's barn owl legs. So they were still in the nest. And this was actually about 2 or 3 weeks after the young one had been picked up. So I got in touch with the rehabbers immediately. I'm like, okay, if it's healthy, we need to get it back in the nest. We got it banded, got it back in the nest the next night, and I put an automated recording unit out there so we could see what's going on, you know, what vocalizations are we getting, how long are they there before they leave the nest. And then they purposely waited until we were not recording anymore before they sent the press release out, just to make sure it was safe. So that was exciting. But I got some new types of vocalizations, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get a lot more calls. So the main thing that I had been recording is this like territorial call. This is what this sounds like, but I hardly got it at all at the nest. Yeah, that's a barn owl call for you. So that I recorded only 2 or 3 times at the nest. You would think with parents coming in over the weeks, you would get a lot of this. They say nothing. Kids begging, that we got a lot of. First recording session, 4 days. I extracted, this is not an exaggeration, over 10,000 individual begging calls. So it's just this psh, and that's just what the neighbors would hear every night, just constant psh, psh, psh. Well, so how do you know when the parents come and deliver prey? Well, I finally figured it out. It's when the kids speed up. This is what it sounds like when there's a prey delivery. Parents say nothing. That's it. And the sound doesn't carry that far. So the neighbors knew about it, and they kept it under wraps, so it went absolutely perfectly. The barn owls raised up, left the area. The neighbors all paid attention and got to see them, and nobody got inundated. So it was fantastic. There was one other call that I heard while putting the young one back in the nest, And it's been described as a mobbing call, but basically, I call it the bloody murder call, and you can think of it as a string of expletives, because they are cursing at whatever it is, like me holding a baby, putting it back in the nest. Okay, the kid was screaming bloody murder, and the parent comes in and flies over like, what are you doing with my kid? And the neighbors also heard it, like usually if there was a dog out in somebody's yard or some other potential predator. So this is that call. So it's longer and more drawn out. So these are the calls that I was able to record there. But that's basically, if it's longer and drug out, and that's repeated over and over and over again till the source of what's ticking them off goes away. But that's basically swearing in barn owl. This is basically recorder locations with the exact locations removed. So the red ones are where barn owl recorders that picked up barn owls. The brown one is where I didn't, and the star is where the nest was in La Crosse. So this is spread out over Houston, Fillmore, Winona County, and then the La Crosse County one also. Detection dates. This is where it gets interesting. So you can see spring and fall are when I'm getting barn owls on the recorders. November 11th was kind of an abnormally late date. If you compare that to all prior years that I had recorded barn owls, March 18th was abnormally early. But look, April and May is when they call, and September and October is when they call. Almost nothing during the summer. Now, these aren't necessarily breeding birds. I don't know if they're breeding birds or not. I'm not getting begging calls. Are they passing through areas? What is this vocalization I'm recording? But spring and fall are the times to do monitoring for barn owls. So, effort. You got to be a little bit nuts to do this. So for all of 2021, I recorded 41 individual barn owl screams, excluding the nest. That's 41, that's like a great horned owl hooting 41 times in 6 different locations. That's not much. On 13 different nights. That was for 970 recorder nights. So I didn't have all 6 recorders out for the same number of nights. So the ones from 2020 I was able to put out earlier. And then, you know, the latest one only went up in July or something. 970 recorder nights, 13 nights had barn owls. Drove 849 miles and put in 87 hours either in the car or sitting behind a computer staring at spectrograms. So it takes a lot of effort. So where have we seen barn owls in Minnesota in the last 10 years? Nesting records are the yellow ones. Red ones are where dead ones have been found, although I should have put on there just east of Winona County, there was a dead one found also within the last 10 years. Detailed report in pink, and then the audio recordings in blue. So this is where we know they have been in the last 10 years, and prior to that, this is a compilation of MAO data, as well as when people come to the Owl Center, you know, a lot of older folks that live in the area saw barn owls a long time ago. But if a visitor comes in and thinks they saw a barn owl, then I come down and totally grill them and figure out, okay, is this a maybe? Or, you know, because everybody wants to have had a barn owl, right? But some people clearly have had them. So I added a few counties based on reports that I was pretty sure were solid. So the next steps, I want to monitor the 2021 nest locations and place recorders in new locations next year to see if we're picking them up in different locations. And kind of just a little fun addendum. Earlier this week, I got a call from the Wisconsin DNR of a barn owl report down in Crawford County, and would I go check that out? They had a photo of one, unequivocally it was a barn owl, from Monday, I think. We went there, and there was poop and pellets all over the place. There was a molted primary that would have had to have been there for a few months. I mean, it was old, and they wouldn't be molting primaries this time of year. So then that kind of makes you think, okay, well, we've had a nest in Wabasha County, we had La Crosse, we've got the habitats we've been picking them up in are pastures and shortgrass prairie, but it seems like there's this, you know, maybe potential urban river vibe thing going on, so I kind of want to explore that in future years also. So huge thanks to the MOU for funding, Minnesota DNR and Wildlife Acoustics, and my husband Hein Bloem and Piper the American Barn Owl for their help with this stuff. Are there any questions?
Hi, I was wondering, since you said that you had trail cams for the potential nest boxes that you put up, would you, now that you know that there are some established nests, be able to have video along with your audio in the natural cavities, or is there any potential to have kind of that camera aspect as well?
If they go back to the lacrosse nest, there is a possibility of that. I probably would look to somebody else, like the Raptor Resource Project, to do something like that. I kind of get overextended sometimes because I do most of the research on weekends and evenings. So, and then we have our own live cam that I'm trying to keep up with also. But yeah, if they go back, there would be that possibility.
Are you able to estimate how many separate individuals are represented by the different vocalizations you've heard on your audio recordings?
That would be excellent. So if it were great horned owls, I'm fairly good at identifying individuals, and they're pretty sedentary, so it's easier for them. Barn owls, I haven't figured out how to do individual recognition yet, so I couldn't say. We did have one night where we had 2 recorders that were 3 miles apart, and both picked up a barn owl within 4 minutes of each other. So I would assume it's probably the same bird. I think these birds probably fly far and wide. I don't know how far and wide they go. I have had one night where I recorded 2 individuals, one with a much higher voice, so I could say unequivocally on that recording it was 2 different individuals. But otherwise, I can't say. But it seems weird that one or just a few individuals would hit 5 of the recorders. So I would assume there's several different individuals involved here. How many, I can't say for certain until I figure out how to tell individual barn owls apart.
Hi, do you happen to know what's happening with the snowy owls that they're trapping at the airport?
Ooh, that's not my specialty. I assume they're relocating them away from the airport because large owls and airplanes don't play well together. I mean, they can, but there's always the risk that's not good for either one of them. But usually they're relocating. I don't know if somebody else wants to address that one.
I've been looking for barn owls in Blue Earth County for several years. And you have these great horns and barn owls, I'm assuming, kind of within proximity with one another. If I was looking for a habitat that was going to be more toward barn and less toward great horn, what should I be looking for?
Good question, because there's one spot where I didn't get anything for barn owls, and I got great horned owls. I mean, it's like this beautiful, expansive pasture and prairie. I'm like, this is just screaming for barn owls, and I'm just getting great horned owls. But that being said, at every place I'm picking up barn owls, I am also picking up great horned owls, barred owls, and screech owls at most of them also. So this thing that, okay, everybody is separate from each other, not so much. I have a 4-second recording with 3 different species of owls calling within the 4 seconds. But generally, I would say, from what I've found with my recorders, I would look for large pastures, short grass prairie. That's where we've been finding them, not every location, but then what's going on with like these urban river ones too.
But there has to be like a mature woods then, like, you know, you're describing a very large silver maple or abandoned building or something like that, right?
Yeah, they need something for nesting if they're going to stick around. But if you look at the 4 recent nest reports between Minnesota and Wisconsin, you've got one in a natural tree cavity, you have one in a barn, you have one in a deer stand, and you've got one in metal tubing. So, I mean,
So basically they're the house wren of all owls.
they just kind of do whatever.
All right. Thanks so much, Karla. Thanks so much.